Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Whether you're joining us on the TV and radio side or over on the live stream and podcast, we're glad to have you. We have a ton of new information, a new investigatory piece from Luke Rosiak on Ilhan Omar's sister, an extended family, like $20 million in a USAID, tons of defunct NGO organizations that just so happens to be in the exact same address as the Feeding Our Families, Feeding Our Futures Medicare, Medicaid fraud scheme. We're going to have to get to some of that, though, in a couple of minutes, because as of right now, the 13th consecutive night of strikes is underway, and there's a bit of extra news to this one. So right now in Iran, the United States Navy and Air Force are pounding 3 sites specifically so far. These sites would be Sirak Island, which is right next to the Strait of Hormuz. We also know that they have struck Bahrain in Iran, and then the Shalameh border crossing. Now, this border crossing is the real piece of information here that a lot of others aren't really reporting on, because the Iranians had tried to strike several of the border crossing areas and regions alongside Iraq and Kuwait. And then, of course, the Iranian regime announced that they were going to potentially invade Kuwait with ground forces, which was never really going to happen. Well, then the United States responded by firing at an Iranian border crossing area where it was believed that there was a mass of Islamic Revolutionary Guard corpsmen that were out in the open. Now, that moving aside, there are also heavy Iraqi military deployments in Baghdad and a couple of other cities. Security forces are reportedly moving to prevent pro-Iranian militias from launching drones and rockets towards Iraqi Kurdistan and the neighboring Gulf states. So that means, effectively here, that the Prime Minister of Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and then Bahrain and Kuwait are now effectively and openly part of this Gulf War II electric boogaloo. And when you have a bunch of different states that are now joining in on the operation, look, it is in fact a war. It is in fact a war that, whether dragged into or leaping into, the Gulf states are deciding to get involved. So after Iran chose to launch a series of missile strikes and drone strikes against Kuwait and against Bahrain, in the early part of July, this is according to the Wall Street Journal, and the date is intentionally obscured here, the Kuwaitis and the Bahrainians coordinated with the United States to launch a series of jet strikes into central and western Iran. The purpose of these strikes was to hit, according to the Wall Street Journal, a series of drone storage sites and depots, suspected areas that the Iranians were hoarding drones. The Iranians responded by saying that now Bahrain and Kuwait are legitimate targets. So apparently just now, as of right now, Iran has decided they're going to target Bahrain and Kuwait. Have they not been doing that already? What an absolutely insane, nonsensical thing to suggest. Oh, now they are officially military targets. Iran has been firing missiles at anyone and everyone, and using all of their proxies to do so. The Iranians have tried very hard to get the Houthis in Yemen to bring Saudi Arabia into the conflict and to close the Red Sea, the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, so that you would really feel some financial strain, because the Iranians are no longer able to effectively close the Strait of Hormuz, and at least both the north and the southern route. So what does that mean effectively here? Well, as of right now, and by right now I mean 7:10 and 30 seconds p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, July 24th, the Saudis are leveling a ton of Houthi weapons depot and suspected targets. For example, at the Hodeidah airport under Houthi control in Yemen, the Yemeni Houthis have released a really cool AI video showing a bunch of like Saudi Arabian oil facilities. I don't think the Houthis have really realized quite yet that the Saudis have been holding back. And the Trump administration has made it clear he's been kind of dangling a piece of steak in front of a lot of the Gulf countries for quite a bit of time now. Now, the UAE has already effectively joined this war. It has now flown 2 separate missions of its Mirage 2000 fighter jets at Iranian targets, none in the last week that we know of. And then Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, in some cases, the president has urged to join the fray. And then, of course, the Saudi Arabians. And then Iran started trying to use the Houthis to pressure the United States through the Saudis, and it didn't work. Arachi is already on his way back from Kyrgyzstan. His pleas to the Chinese and the Russians did not work. And the reason it didn't work is because Russia's currently dealing with St. Petersburg, which is on fire. And then China is dealing with a whole host of problems that come from trying to build a bunch of AI infrastructure while all of your people are struggling to build concrete, as usual, without rebar. So the Iranians are really starting to struggle. And there is a significant amount of panic for the Iranians here. So first of all, not only have Bahrain and Kuwait started joining the actual conflict, but the Saudis, in this strange kind of tit for tat, a little quid pro quo, 2016 administration, anybody? The president is dangling this nuclear deal of nuclear deals over Saudi Arabia. And the point of this, as the president said yesterday and then reiterated again today, is that the entire framing, the contingency of the Saudis getting any kind of nuclear assistance from the United States would be to join the Abraham Accords. For the first time that we have ever seen, you have Israel, Lebanon, the state government of Lebanon, that is, and then Jordan, as well as the Iraqi prime minister, and the Saudis, the Kuwaitis, the Emirates, sometimes the Jordanians, they're like why, sometimes a vowel in this case, and then last but certainly not least, Bahrain, attempting to kind of join together as a block of power in the Middle East. And this has Egypt and Turkey very, very confused, which is funny. But how is the actual strikes going right now? So Iran is attempting to fire a couple of missiles. They're running out of places to fire from that they can then reuse. So the accuracy is getting worse. During the ceasefire, during the MOU that was promoted, the Iranians were not only able to kind of move some things around, like under Pickaxe Mountain, for example, but they were also able to sight their ballistic missiles. So believe it or not, there's just a little bit more to firing ordnance, whether they be drones or missiles or the classic artillery and cannon of yore, than just sticking the tube in the ground, pointing the other end up at the sky, and yelling fire in your appropriate language. And in this instance, the Iranians, whose initial strikes were a lot more accurate at the end of the ceasefire, now the United States is not even encouraging the Bahrainians to fire interceptors at everything. So, for example, one particular strike you can see this evening, an Iranian missile hitting the ground in Bahrain, an Iranian missile. And the strike hit dirt. Why did the strike hit dirt? Because the Iranians missed. And so why waste an interceptor if, after all of the extra equipment that's been levied into the area, it can predict, it being the military apparatus of the United States and the Gulf allies now, that if the Iranians are going to hit nothing, then just leave it alone and save the interceptor for another rainy day. Now, there is one other final scoop on the evening, and I should say scoop kind of with an asterisk because it is now being reported for about 25 minutes. But the United States military has fired on and disabled a second merchant ship, which has tried to violate the Iranian blockade. So according to CENTCOM spokesman Captain Hawkins, the maritime Levine tried to run the blockade at least 4 times. So essentially, the boat started revving up its engines, and the United States said, stop. And then they did it again, and the United States said, pada. And they did it again, and the United States said, I don't know, stop in a different language. And then finally, they got tired with it, and the military fired into its engine room. And so yet another engine block has been given supreme ventilation by the United States. Now, last but not least, there is one other issue that the Iranians are terrified of. And the way that this is framed is a little bit different than you might expect. So there was a lot of reporting today that Muqtada Khamenei, the son of Ayatollah al-Khamenei, who yet to this point no one has seen, no one knows is alive, there's no audio, there's no video, there's nothing of this guy. There's not even a Polaroid of him with Bill Clinton. No one knows where this guy is, but apparently he's more open to the idea of now developing nuclear weapons because Iran was totally never pursuing nuclear weapons until now. Exciting stuff. There's another little extra piece there. The actual intelligence reports, and I don't just mean one unnamed official to the New York Times, but according to multiple intelligence officials actually sharing chunks of the reporting in the diplomatic cables, have suggested that the Iranian regime is currently very, very worried that though Pickaxe Mountain and that installation is carved very deep under, that the United States could carry out some type of boots on the ground commando, going and getting bin Laden style raid, going and nabbing Maduro style raid, that the Iranians would not be able to go and dig up later. The IRGC is not in any way, shape, or form ready to repel any kind of ground invasion that would be a special operation inside Iran. And the president did talk a little bit about this today. Radio crew, we have to send you to the commercial break before the FCC, sends a commando raid through this complex. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We're going to continue on the live stream. So there are three questions that a lot of Americans are asking. And they're all, well, two of the three are very valid questions. Question number one is, what's the tipping point for the president on major action, really great major Baywatch level action? And that's a question a lot of people have, because the president said he'd spend 48 hours. Today, he met with a bunch of senior advisors and did some strategizing, pulled out the old risk board and decided to see how many dice rolls and men, cannon, and horses it might take to move the dial. And so the president was asked this about a major tipping action by one female reporter today.
With that, yeah.
You told Axios that you were considering a, quote, massive attack on Iran. What is the tipping point for you to make the decision?
Well, I can't tell you that. Right now we're talking to them, so, maybe there won't be a tipping point, and maybe there will. We're ready to go. Look, we're locked and loaded. We're ready to go, but we're talking to them. So maybe there will be, maybe there won't be a tipping point.
But at what point with Iran do you think they're going to cry uncle and actually come to the table?
Now, the real answer to this, by the way, is that the current parliament, there are too many of them alive. The current regime as it stands, there are too many of them alive. The IRGC, there's too many of them that are alive. Because the United States is not doing an all-out, no-holds-barred, just a rock'em sock'em robot, full going across the desert in one huge line of tanks style Gulf War I action here. There's not. We're coming out of the old little Vietnam tit for tat nonsense. And the president of the United States is going to be asked about power plants later. And to be fair to the reporter here, he cannot really answer what the tipping point is, because as soon as Iran knows what the line is, they know exactly what they have to ride out.
Well, maybe they will cry uncle, or maybe they'll just give up, or maybe they'll just go into a cave and hide. They have caves very deep in the ground, and they can hide. They get shaken up pretty good, but they can hide. But we've taken out their first level of leadership. We've then taken out their second level of leadership. We've taken out some of the third level, and we're negotiating with the rest. And we'll see how it all works. And right now we are talking to them seriously, but I've talked to them before, and they don't seem to be able to get there. Maybe now they will.
Now, the president right now is speaking at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So we'll let you know if there's any particular updates from the president on that this evening. The second question that a lot of Americans are asking, what's the exit strategy? This question comes from Peter Doocy over at Fox News.
The exit strategy.
Well, I think there's a lot of them. There's a military exit where we just keep going just the way we are, and we can even make it a heavier dose, and it's knocking out everything they have. Or there's a smarter strategy, and that's you make a deal, and they want to make a deal. I just don't think they're ready yet, but they do want to make a deal. Sometimes they don't want to say they want to make a deal. They want to be the tough guys, but they do want to make a deal. There's two ways. I mean, it's you can just keep doing exactly what we're doing and take them apart piece by piece. We could do it in a more rapid fashion, which we might do, or we can negotiate with them, which we're also doing right now. I mean, as we speak, we're talking to them.
Now, the other side of the exit strategy here is the question is what the actual impact down the line is going to be. No one really asked that, whether they thought the economy was going to move one way or the other, or it was going to get exciting, or it was going to get a little less so. And no one really broke that with the president here. And that was, that was just a little bit strange to me. But we did get one question from the New York Times about, Mr. President, what about the war crimes? What about the war crime? You can't hit a power plant. Who's going to pay for the IRGC singular texting plan? Who's going? So the president didn't. Yeah, here. This is the question that was asked.
About a war crime. Do you?
I won't respond to that question. Who are you with?
The New York Times.
I figured so.
Yeah, little bit indeed. Just excellent stuff. So again, we're going to keep you guys appraised of some of those details. There are two other huge breaking stories out today. One on the former president of the United States dropping a lawsuit. It's a big deal on that one. And then the USAID Ilhan Omar stuff. Radio crew, welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Luke Rosiak over at the Daily Wire dropped a rather intense report today, in which we got to learn a little bit about Ilhan Omar's sister. So Ilhan Omar, again, representative from Minnesota, up in that great, amazing, super built America, I'm told, Somali community. After that whole feeding our future and then all of the daycare fraud scandals, in which we were told that, Nick Shirley didn't find anything, and then he found a bunch of stuff, and, the federal investigators hadn't found things, but then actually, Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, came out and tried to take credit for doing all of the prosecuting there. Well, Luke Rosiak's new article over at the Daily Wire links Ilhan Omar's sister to a lot of central figures inside the Minnesota fraud scandal. So this lady, Sahra Noor, used the address of a woman who was business partners with several major convicts in the scandal. This is a huge piece of all of these entire various outlined scandals, because this is literally an article just full of scandal after scandal after scandal after scandal. This is wild. Luke Rosiak usually takes a year, 6 months to a year between investigations. The man is opening up like a weekly newsletter, and every single one is jam-packed. I do want to mention, thank you very kindly to those over in the live stream chat that have also been giving like gifts this evening. You guys don't have to do that, but we do want to tell you that we appreciate it. So Omar's sister, Sahra Noor, used the address of one of the ladies here who was business partners, so sharing financial accounts, business contracts with several of the major convicts in the feeding our future, feeding our families, that kind of crime organization, this fraud scandal operation. And here's a little extra piece before we even get in. A Minnesota House committee was probing Ilhan Omar's involvement. There was a Minnesota State House committee that included Republicans and Democrats. Well, mostly Republicans, like one Democrat. And then the auditor of the legislature, who was probing Ilhan Omar's involvement and her sister, Sahra Noor's involvement. And then the Minnesota State House Democrats blocked a subpoena for those records back in May. So in May, they were starting to look around and say, wait, why are there like 80 businesses registered at one address? And why are all of them different variations of the spelling for Muhammad? That's rather interesting. And then the Minnesota Democrats said, no, blocking those particular subpoenas. So Noor had run businesses, including the People's Center Clinics and Services in a Minneapolis Somali neighborhood, which received a $2 million earmark, while Ilhan Omar, her sister, was a state representative. So there's a long history of some questions of nepotism and kind of, I've heard you heard of feeding our future. How about, feeding our family, a little something under the table? So this was years ago. She ran this People's Center Clinics and Services. And while Representative Ilhan Omar was a state representative, helped ensure there was a little $2 million cutout in one of the state budgets, that ballooned enormously that Tim Walz was so proud of, for Ilhan Omar's sister's People's Centers, Clinics, and Services. Now, hang on to that for a second. Get you a piece of red thread tied around your finger. We're going to come back to this whole People's Center Clinics and Services. As thorough as Luke's investigation is here, he had to move forward, and I have a little something from yours truly that Nick Shirley also talked about today regarding the medical services. But anywho, let's move on. After that, Noor then founded Grit Partners Consulting, in which she says she has secured more than $20 million in funding, wait for it, for health initiatives and consulted on projects backed by federal agencies such as USAID and the Centers for Disease Control. So Ilhan Omar's sister, immediately after this clinical medical services thing that she got a $2 million grant from Minnesota, then turned around and founded Grit Partners Consulting and secured more than $20 million in grant funding from agencies like USAID, which is now shut down. Now, as a quick reminder, this was Ilhan Omar's reaction when USAID was shut down by the State Department.
Really a sad day in America. We are witnessing a constitutional crisis. We talked about.
That's the first time Ilhan Omar's ever cared about the Constitution of the United States. Congratulations there, hon. That's exciting. I mean, some might say this is hitting a little close to home.
Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one.
Because what do dictators do? And by the way, I will make this clear. There is corruption. There are scandals all over the place all the time when it comes to families giving, individuals in their families favors. I've criticized this quite a bit. And on the Republican side, it's just as gross as when it's on the Democrat side. I do, however, enjoy Ilhan Omar suggesting that shutting down a government-funded personal piggy bank that had long since lost its original mission of being a presidential bribery fund to bribe other countries not to work with the Soviets. That's what it was founded for. Then it became, as we covered yesterday, free condoms and lubricant for transgender people in Nepal. Anywho.
And here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like. When you gut the Constitution and you install yourself as the sole power, that is how dictators are made.
Exciting, thrilling, amazing, wonderful. I almost believe you. Now, that brings us over to some of the other updates here, because it's not just the grit partners and, it just looks a little suspicious here. That would just be, that's suspicious. Here's where it gets damning. The Grit Partners consulting agency that Noor founded was incorporated at a residential address on Hyacinth Avenue in Lakeville, Minnesota, occupied by an individual named Masha Ahmed Ali and his wife, Ister. Ister Ahmed Afra. Afra opened up the Sunrise Business Center Incorporated with Hannah Markigan, who pled guilty in 2022 to wire fraud for stealing $7 million. Markigan claimed to feed 4,000 children daily, that's the Feeding Our Future thing, but instead bought a mansion and testified that she falsely alleged racism to deflect scrutiny. Now, Afra also incorporated, so again, this Grit Partner organization, this little venture capitalist fund, also I always love how whether it's like AOC's boyfriend or whether it's Ilhan Omar's husband, or in this case, whether it's her sister on the left who hates venture capitalism, boy, they sure have a lot of consulting and venture capital firms. Boy, howdy, how curious. Anywho, I don't want to get ahead of myself here. So Ilhan Omar's sister incorporated her Grit Partners at a residential house that is also, again, with the Sunrise Business Center that ended up being a part of the whole Feeding Our Future fraud, stealing $7 million, 4,000 children daily. Afra also incorporated the Sunshine Care Minnesota Incorporated at the same office address. And then Markigan listed it as her employer on LinkedIn, meaning that Markigan, who pled guilty, also claimed to work for the Sunshine Care Center. Afra is also tied to Amy Bach, who is the Feeding Our Future ringleader, sentenced to 41 years, 500 months. In state data, Bach is the point of contact for the Sunshine Care Center and for Diversity Child Care Center, LLC. Yes, exciting stuff. According to the state documents and Luke Rosiak's excellent reporting, Bach said that the head of the Sunshine Care Center was brought to the program by this person named Sahra Noor, who was sentenced to about 4 years, 51 months, to whom Afra is very closely tied. Now, Afra was also the CEO of Aflac Property Incorporated. No, not Aflac. Aflac Property Incorporated, which operated from Noor's home on Fordham Court Northeast. A $30,000 state tax lien against Afra listed that address. Radio Crew will send you to the commercial break. It gets worse. We'll come back in a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We're going to continue on the live stream. The reason I'm bringing up all of these little bits and pieces, like how all of it is connected, sometimes you have individuals out there who will connect dots and you are like reaching, like Brett Kavanaugh said the word beer 52 years ago, like that kind of a thing. Yeah, that's not what this is. This would be, there are so many different individuals that were active in fraud schemes, tax liens, different business violations, that Minnesota had the obligation as a state government, according to their current legislative and their auditor policies and procedures, to go in and investigate these things. They were all directly connected. They were all listing each other's addresses as their own. They were all listing each other as their employees. They were all doing a bunch of services that all involved either totally legit medical services, wink, 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 to get USAID money or $2 million from the Minnesota state budget money, or they were doing childcare, wink, 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 care, or they were taking money to feed the children's, wink, 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 and totally not do any wire fraud or mortgage fraud, and on it goes. So Noor's home was used to set up all kinds of nonprofits. For example, the Academy for Youth Excellence, alleged $3.5 million in theft. Goalless Properties, LLC, $3.9 million in theft, with $2.5 million used to buy a block on East Lake Street. Noor also ran Kulmiye Management, LLC, and Afra was an executive in Kulmiye Property, LLC. Afra brought a property directly across the street from one forfeited to the government because it was purchased with stolen funds. So their stealing is overlapping each other. It's insane. It's insane. So this is where things really start to get a little bit ugly for Ilhan's sister here. So Ilhan's sister, her closest associate, is Masha Ahmed Ali. He is the owner of the Hyacinth Avenue home that the sister, Miss Sahra Noor, used as like the base of all of her operations for things. So Masha Ahmed Ali, who has the same last name as a Kenyan and created companies including Pro Transit Allies LLC, there's your CDL semi-trucking thing because of course, and then Puntland Transport LLC. Puntland is an area of Somalia that Kenyan advocates for, by the way. This guy, Luke, called and said, hey, did you know that someone has registered all of these dozens of companies, and your wife, Sahra Noor, like, hey, this is kind of really weird. You have all of these businesses registered to you, and they're really, really fraudulent. And also, I can't help but notice, like, no one really knows where you are in the country. And here's how it goes from, well, this is really bad and it should be investigated, to round them up today and now. So called the guy, this Masha Ahmed Ali, and he says, of course, oh, I've never heard of any of this stuff. I've never heard of any of these businesses. I've never been in any kind of businesses. I never did nothing. So if you were wondering, here is the particular chart for those who are watching on the live stream. Sahra Noor, again, has Grit Partners Consulting and the People's Center Clinics, which we're going to get to in a second. And she directly is connected to this Ister Afra and the Hyacinth Avenue house, where everyone everywhere, this house, like show up and just like do all of this various nonsense. Now there's another address that looks more like a business center and is kind of a bit more like a business. It looks kind of like a school. But what's the point? What's the actual point, as one of the comments said, get to it. I want to outline the threads because I try to be thorough. The point is that Ilhan Omar's sister, who got $20 million from USAID, happens to run her businesses from this same house that all of the fraud businesses come from. Radio crew, welcome back from the commercial break. Now, there's one final piece of really fraudulent extra nastiness that I haven't had a chance to talk about yet, and Luke Rosiak did not have a chance to talk about during his investigatory piece. The very first business that Ilhan Omar's sister founded, Miss Sahra Noor, it was that People's Center Clinics and Services. And it isn't just like a clinic. You just found in a place for people to go get a little first aid and resuscitation and such, get splinters removed and things. No, this was a medical services and materials kind of an organization. And as Nick Shirley points out today, these DMEs, these durable medical equipment companies, seem to have the same pattern of seeking grants and not providing any services at all, whether you're in Minnesota or, as Nick Shirley points out today, in New York City.
Here inside of these residential apartment complexes, we have some DME companies, durable medical equipment companies that receive money from New York Medicaid, and it's a bit fishy that they're operating inside of these residential apartment complexes. So we're going to see what's going on. We have Premier, Lifeline, and Next Gen. They're all operating out of one apartment. Let's see what's going on.
Okay, I just want to make this really, really, really crystal clear. So when in the last couple of years, I have had several different business organizations that I've been associated with. So I ran Chalkboard Review, which was the education outlet that I founded. I took over Choice Media, a nonprofit, and it later became Chalkboard Media. And you have to register addresses. The IRS and, by the way, the state of Indiana and the state of, I think it was Delaware's business offices for the state, they called me multiple times and said, hey, you have some of these things listed in the same address. Is this all legit? All around the country, in Indiana, in Ohio, in Minnesota, in New York, in California, you have all of these foreigner-owned and operated businesses that are all packed into one apartment, and they're all the same kind of company. You've got like Umad Ahmar LLC right next to the Transport and Hugs and Services Company, right next to the Somali Feeding Everybody Company, next to the Totally Legit Muhammad Trucking Company, and they're all in the same one-bedroom apartment. That's what Shirley's pointing out here. Now we can add medical equipment companies to the list.
Hello. How's it going, ma'am? My name is Nick. Is Premier DME here?
DME?
Yeah. Here, 3.
I am Premier DME. You're a medical equipment services company. Where are the medical equipment and services?
Durable medical equipment companies were launched within just a few months apart here, and that takes money from Medicaid and Medicare services.
I was told no one was defrauding Medicare and Medicaid. I was told that the foreigners, that those who are here and maybe not citizens, that they couldn't get access to Medicare and Medicaid. That's what I was told. You were told. I remember.
And so we're wondering, like, where's the equipment at?
Actually, I don't know.
But
I don't know.
So do you guys not have any of the equipment here?
No, I don't have any.
So how come your husband has this address registered as the location for 3 different companies that receive money from Medicaid for durable medical equipment?
Oh, we just get checks.
He's coming maybe like half hour. I don't know. Actually, I don't.
Now again, from the rest of it, he keeps asking questions. Eventually, he ends up talking to some officials, and this is being investigated around the country. Finally. And again, in Minnesota, this was supposed to be probed into years ago when it was a direct case of family nepotism. And Minnesota Democrats said, no, you can't just go asking questions about Ilhan Omar. Don't you know how important she is? So what if some people did something? It's truly diabolical. And then here's why all of this matters. And I said this at the time, and I've made this as an example on the show. Before I did this, I was in education, and I got 2 master's degrees from Ball State University, one in curriculum development, one in education technology. And I had a graduate partner in one of my classes with a Dr. Ford. We had to come up with this graduate research project. And this guy was making an entire graduate project that he wanted to study that was about, and I'm not joking here even a little, if you put condoms on the udders of cows, does the cow feel sexual pleasure? I'm not joking. I've said that before. And I asked him, I'm like, are you okay? Like, do you need help? Do we need to call somebody? And he said, it doesn't matter. If you just submit studies, you just submit grant applications for any kinds of thing, no one in the government ever checks. No one in state hospital or state medical programs in these universities, no one in these federal programs, none of them check. They'll just give you money, especially if your name sounds like it came from the Mos Eisley Cantina. Oh, I see here that Zasqualub Nanoy has done all of that. Oh, well, let him on. And again, the 2-tier system here also works not just for fraud, but in cases of serious crime. So going a little bit backing out in Minnesota, there is an individual who was, in pretty hot water after this viral video. Shiloh Hendricks was with her child, and she called this guy that was filming her the N-word. That's what she called this person. He was filming on video, all this stuff. She was just convicted in court in Minnesota for the crime of disorderly conduct, but for saying the N-word. And in this particular video, made it clear that she was calling the cameraman, not the child, the slur. And the boy here, the boy's father, Shire Jamal, used a translator during the trial, testified he had totally no GoFundMe. There's a lot of mess to this. According to Shiloh's lawyer, Brian Carolus, those two things are a lie. His investigator was going to testify. There was another active GoFundMe, but the judge would not allow the investigator to testify. So it was a very, very weird trial in which the judge would not allow the guy who was holding up his camera, who was saying, say that word again to me. And then Shiloh Hendricks, kind of doubled down while talking to him. That this guy said, oh, the translator, and I'm just a regular simple guy. And then that was all complete bullcrap. Now, why do I bring up this particular case? So in this what Shiloh was sentenced to for saying the N-word at a park was a $1,000 fine, 200 hours of community service, supervised probation, and if she doesn't do those things, a 90-day jail sentence. Well, so I should say she was also sentenced to the 90-day jail sentence, but it was stayed if she complies with the terms of her probation. Meaning if she pays $1,000, 200 hours of community service, and then undergoes supervised probation, like where you call and say, I'm not drinking and I haven't left the state, that kind of stuff. So according to the actual lawsuit, according to the case here, she was not convicted. I thought originally when she was being brought up on charges that at a public park, if you're like shouting a bunch of obscenities in front of children, then that's what the charges were for. Like you can't like scream at a child in public, which by the way, I kind of don't really mind that as a standard. If that's a standard for everybody, you shouldn't be in a public park. Like if you're a homeless person on the bench yelling slurs at children, I don't think you should be allowed to do that. I don't care what color you are. The issue here though, is that the jury she's not guilty for screaming that in front of the child. She's been given this charge of and convicted of disorderly conduct here because she screamed the N-word at this dude, this fully grown adult. Why do I make that a big point here? Because there's a little bit of a two-tiered system here. So not only can we point out very clearly that if there were any different skin colors here, this would not have been the charge and this would not have gone through at all. That's an obvious. Number two, this exact same judge who, again, $1,000 fine, 200 hours community service, supervised probation, this exact same judge in 2023 sentenced a man who admitted to possessing, let's say, rather gross materials, child sex abuse materials, to 100 days of community service and probation. So if you're in Minnesota and you're a white person and you call a black or brown person the N-word, you will get double the fine. You'll get a fine. You'll get double the community service and supervised probation if you possess child sexual abuse materials. You may get 100 days of community service and then some light probation. Now, none of this defends whatever it was that she said. Well, I know what she said. It was obviously on video. None of this defends saying slurs of any kind. What I am saying here, though, is the First Amendment does, in fact, grant you the ability to call another adult a slur if you want. That's a thing you can do. Now, you can't threaten to kill people. You can't threaten to hurt people in many different ways, obviously. But yeah, this is bizarre. Again, just the two-tier standard of justice. I should also mention, oh man, I almost forgot. The cameraman, Sharmake Bele Omar, was let off of a child rape charge in 2023, quote, in the interest of justice, end quote. So, do with that what you will. Do with that what you will. Just some interesting multiple standards here that seem to be afoot. Now, over one state in Wisconsin, things are also getting very spicy because the socialist candidate for governor just so happens to be trying to incite, actual riots and violence because a guy running around with a knife and also a criminal, a lot of other issues there, got shot by the cops. We're going to talk about that on the live stream radio crew. We have to send you to that commercial break territory. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Oh, hang on. My producer Josiah is telling me that the prosecution didn't even call on the cameraman to testify in the case. Oh, that's disgusting. Just such injustice. I'm sure there are other shows and commentators out there that would do a far better job of covering this particular case than I would. So many tiers and standards of justice here. Wow. All right, on Wisconsin, because it does get just a lot worse. Now, I should also mention we have news tonight on the Joe Biden legal team dropping their charges or dropping their charges, dropping their lawsuit against the Trump administration and the Oversight Project on trying to keep Joe Biden's tapes from his memoirs secret. But first, we have to cover this Wisconsin news because, again, well, let me get right to it. Madison police responded on Wednesday afternoon to reports of a man checking parked vehicles and possibly stealing bicycles in the Marquette neighborhood. Officers identified the suspect as Corey Ruiz, a man in his 30s who fled on a bicycle through nearby backyards. You know, like you do if you're... Look, guys, as someone who spent probably too much time in Madison proper when I was working for Governor Scott Walker, riding your bicycle just casually through backyards, that's not like a common thing. Like you're like right next to a university campus, and so, this backyard is kind of more of a pathway to cut between these two roads kind of a thing. No, that's not where this is. I'm afraid not. So officers caught up with Ruiz around 1:30 p.m. near the intersection of Williamson Street and South Baldwin Street, colloquially called kind of Willie Street by a lot of those in Madison, where a physical struggle then broke out. Now, police say that Ruiz produced a large switchblade during the altercation, cutting one officer while another officer was also injured. So as far as I am concerned, at this point, all you really should have to do is if he cut one officer, show the cut, and then that's justifiable cause, in my very humble opinion here. But anyway, officers then deployed a taser, but police say it was ineffective. And the officer who had then been stabbed fired his weapon, striking Ruiz. Now, officers rendered medical aid, which, curiously here, officers rendered medical aid before Ruiz was transported to a hospital, and then Ruiz was pronounced dead. So we do have a clip, the bystander clip of the encounter. Probably not going to play a lot of this because I'm not sure how much the live streaming services will let me play it, but it's a disturbing video. So this is when the officers are then like trying to render the aid. It's a rough situation here. Again, there's a lot of scuffling, there's a stabbing, then there's the shot, and then they try to render medical aid, and he's dead. Again, the reason I'm not playing this particular clip on the air in full is because it's a little too graphic for me probably to play on this particular platform. So, Governor Tony Evers, Democrat of Wisconsin, then decides that now is the time the Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation has started leading an independent investigation. Standard procedure kind of a thing. And the Dane County District Attorney will eventually review it. The involved officer has not yet been publicly identified, but 4 officers, including the shooter, have been placed on administrative leave pending, the outcome of the investigations. Madison police, by the way, do not use body-worn cameras, but there are, again, bystander videos that have surfaced. So that brings us to the community response. It wasn't, George Floyd Part 2, a little bit kind of a thing. We're going to get into it. The radio crew has to come back from their last commercial break here, and then we're going to dive into some of these details because the way that candidates are so shamelessly trying to use this for oomph, it's rough. Radio crew, welcome back from the commercial break. So after officers shot a man who, again, tried to stab officers with a switchblade. Now, I've watched the video, and it does very much appear like the guy tries to stab/slash the officer. From where I'm sitting, and then the officer who then kind of yelps after being allegedly stabbed here. Yeah, for me, from my watching of the video, again, I'm sorry I can't play this on here. There's not something that is censored enough that I feel comfortable showing you. So that brings us to, there's like a little press conference that some people yelled at. Long story short, all the BLM crew came out to do a lot of yelling. And again, Madison is a very, very liberal town. Here you go. On Willie Street, chance of arrest that cop and things and other yelling, shouts of various expletives as well, and trying to, again, surround police officers. Now, at this point, the Democrat frontrunner for Wisconsin's governor and Democrat Socialist of America member Francesca Hong decides now she needs to get in front of the crowd and call the death of Corey Ruiz an execution. That is quite the move. I would say quite the thing to do. Here you go. We have that clip ready to go.
A man died at the hands of state-sanctioned violence.
He was fucking murdered. Say it.
Say it. It was murder.
So the crowd starts saying that, hey, she was like murdered and stuff. Say it, say it and stuff. My gut, say it. No evidence at all. No investigation is concluded. The socialist crew has already decided that by the color of the individual who was hurt and by the authority who carried out the action, that guilt is immediately applied. And they are demanding that Francesca Hong immediately condemn. Now, Francesca recognizes here that she doesn't have the information. She wants to get out there and be a little Miss Social Justice Warrior, though.
It was murder.
Executed.
Say it. It was murder.
This is my statement.
Murder. Murder.
This state-sanctioned violence was an execution.
Very true.
It said it was an execution. And then the crowd chants and cheers. This is Robespierre, by the way. The French Revolution, the idea is we'll get out there, we'll rile the people up, we'll get them all excited, and we'll say, oh man, the king, he wants to kill you and decapitate you and hurt all of you. And so then Robespierre got out and did this whole rights of man nonsense, and it was an absolute disaster. And it then led to Robespierre getting his own head cut off. And that is exactly how these particular socialist movements tend to go. Now, again, the DSA in a rather ugly situation throughout the country, but please do not just take it from me, what these individuals are saying. Take it from the individuals themselves. So one of the DSA guys gets up and interrupts a police press conference on the incident because, again, judge, jury, executioner, they're already decided. By the nature of whoever it is, doesn't matter if there was a crime committed, doesn't matter if he tried stabbing the officers, doesn't matter if he's a repeat offender who was, again, seen trying to do a little theft in the area when officers caught up to him. None of that matters. It just matters that police shot a brown man. Instant, it's all over. So this Carlos Dixon guy gets up and, well, here you go. See for yourself. What a character.
Not that weapon. We have the power. The city of Madison is corrupt. From the DA to the what's the name of this?
He doesn't even know what he's accusing of corruption. Like, the city of Madison is corrupt from the DA to the, oh, where am I? I don't know where I am. Somebody, hey, Jim, where are we? And he literally has to look at somebody. It's like, I don't even know where we are right now. Yes, we're very well aware that the second grade reading level doesn't quite prepare you to know basic places where you're at.
Department of Independent Monitoring. We don't want any of that talk.
You don't want the independent investigation to be carried forward? So in other places in the country, by the way, where there has been independent investigation done, there was an ICE official in Colorado who I believe was just arrested. There have been investigations that have found members of law enforcement guilty and not guilty. It just so happens that there are a lot of individuals, and body camera footage is a very good thing for a reason, that you happen to find out that, gee, man, once you get all of the information, it seems that sometimes people are garbage, and the cops did the right thing. But again, he's already decided he's going to tell us all what it's about.
Giving us this speech with "you'll deliver justice." Oh, we've seen the cameras. We've seen it was a knife in this young man.
Yeah, I mean, we did see it was a knife in. Yeah. See, the cool thing is you've seen it on the cameras. We've seen the camera. Yes, we have. A lot of us, again. I apologize that I can't show you the actual footage because it turns out that showing the actual murder on screen is probably going to get this taken down. Or again, not in the officers firing the weapon that ended the man's life. Not murder by the legal definition. Based on my watch, we'll see how the investigation turns out. I'm transparent enough with y'all to tell you the take on it as we get the info. But for this guy, he gets up and then the cops do something really stupid, again, because it's Dane County, because it's Madison. And they're like, the floor is yours. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I exist here. I'm so sorry. It's just such coward cuckness.
I'll step aside.
That's right. Oh, give me this microphone.
So the officer's like, I'll step aside. You can talk. And the guy's like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. You'll step aside.
Then excuse me. That's right. My name is Carlos Dixon. I represent AppTap. All power to all people.
So I represent AppTap, all power to all people, and then he then proceeds to list a bunch of people that he doesn't want to have power, which is always, I love it so much. Chef's kiss.
Zero power to Zionists, zero power to capitalists.
Zero power to Zionists. Ah, yes, it was the Jews killed Carlos, the Jews. Ah, yes, The ultimate threat to carjackers, Israel. Oh, the horror. And then capitalists. Mr. Monopoly was the one. Yes,
Zero power to colonialism.
Zero power to, oh man, I get such stage fright, to colonialism. And the man on the Quaker Oats box. And also, who that person that made the subway turnstiles? Colonialism, Colonialsburg, Connor Prairie, the state of Colorado.
What you are doing right now in this city is continuing the disgusting nature of colonialism.
Ah, yes, the great colony of Wisconsin. Ah, yes. Yes, my favorite. Remember when Christopher Columbus sailed across the Sea of Illinois in 1492? Remember the colony of Wisconsin? Good times. Great ones. I do. Time for a history lesson from colonialism.
The disgusting nature of imperialism.
Imperialism too. Ooh, yeah.
The definition of imperialism. It's all within the policies.
The definition of imperialism is all within the policies. Sorry, radio crew, we're going to send you out for the evening. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We'll catch you guys on Tuesday. We're going to continue on the live stream. Y'all take care. Okay, so he says the definition of imperialism is in the policies. Okay, all right.
Which means when these police officers come down on the street and they decide that they want to take the life of another brown body.
So that's what they were doing. So the cops were just walking down the street, you know, maybe doing a little listen to Hadaway's like "What Is Love," just kind of bobbing, and then all of a sudden they see a brown person. And then the officer says, "I got a brown 1-1 here." And then they're like, "Oh, we can't have any of that. Stop right there." And then it's all over. And then women and children are crying in the streets. "Oh no!" That's like, thank goodness that guy was looking a little too brown. Yes. Yes, that's what that. But in that, and again, he's defining imperialism. Yes, imperialism. We all remember that in the 1930s, that when Germany was expanding, they marched into Austria for the Anschluss, and they're like, "Where are the brown people? Are they here? Could send some police down the sidewalk in Madison, Wisconsin. Tell me if there are any brown people stealing from cars."
There is no oversight for that. That's imperialism, ladies.
So then he says there's no oversight. He is literally speaking at the podium of this Office of Independent Investigation, the organization established, and by the way, which has previously convicted charged police officers in Dane County in Wisconsin with various charges. Like, that actual office has done oversight before.
Ladies and gentlemen, this man signed up to be an enforcer of imperialism.
Yes, the office investigating the police signed up to enforce imperialism. He's actually one of the Rough Riders. He single-handedly conquered the Philippines and Cuba. It was incredible.
Is there anybody else want to say anything?
He's run out of things to say.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what, okay, the people want.
Does anybody else want to say anything? I like rice in the microwave. It doesn't matter. And then he's like, "Oh wait, okay. Oh wait a minute. Hold.
Come up here. The people want to talk.
The people want to talk.
People want to talk.
This went on for like 20 minutes. I love it. This is an exciting time. He also told people to go look up like imperialism, like Google it. It's a magical time. It's a magical time to be alive. So again, and there is an element that again, what's not funny here is that this is taking over the Wisconsin Democratic Party pretty much in its entirety. And there are a lot of the Democratic establishment who are pretty unsure of what it is that they're supposed to do here. Now, we do have a guest on to talk a little bit about more of this. There's been, again, more protesting and chanting and doing some I can't breathe George Floyding and stuff like that. We're going to keep an eye on it, but we're going to scoot away to reset the clock here. And then when we come back in, we're going to bring up Brooke Ranjan, over in Wisconsin to talk a little bit about that gubernatorial race, because now once you get out to the politics, the Democrats are currently having like a serious panic at a national stage, which might be why they finally decided to drop the whole Joe Biden lawsuit thing, which we will cover also in a bit. So don't go anywhere. Lots more to cover tonight on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Wisconsin's an absolute mess. And not only is it an absolute mess because, Democrat politics in Wisconsin runs exclusively on steel dust and crack cocaine, but also because you all have been pestering me nonstop about the socialist who wants to nationalize the Packers and the other union candidates out there. It's a mess, but it's a fun mess because it's midterm season. So instead of me, a former Wisconsin liver up during my college years, I'm only slightly ashamed to say so, giving you my take on it, I want to get you the up-to-date, right outside of the nonsense itself from Brooke Brantgen, coming back on the show with us. Of course, she is the Chesterton Fellow over at Newgard Press. She's a writer at The Federalist, a lot of other great outlets. Check out her work. Brooke, help me out. What is going on in that primary? Are you guys okay? Do you guys need us to send some folks up there?
Wisconsin is going through a crazy moment right now. It's a lot more like a soap opera than I think people realize. And typically when we think of the DSA and the rise of socialism, we're thinking about cities that, like places like Colorado. We're thinking about, Midtown Manhattan. And those are the places where we expect to see tons of Democrat chaos and infighting, and especially a lot of prominent socialists rising to power there. But unfortunately, Wisconsin has also been having the same problem, which a lot of people haven't realized. It's kind of flown under the radar. But what we've experienced in the past couple of weeks has been absolutely insane. We had the current lieutenant governor was supposed to be, given the crown. She was the one that a lot of people were rumored to want to back. A lot of major donors were very interested in her campaign. And then it turns out that she had made major campaign finance errors. So she ended up suddenly dropping out. Well, that led to a whole host of other issues where we had people that had formerly dropped out of the campaign, including Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, re-enter the campaign, and then all of a sudden get our current governor, who is not running for re-election's endorsement. But there's still not a lot of confidence. And we have Mandela Barnes, who previously ran a failed election against Senator Ron Johnson. He's in the campaign, but a lot of people don't have faith in him because he hasn't been successful in statewide elections in the past, clearly. And so that leaves at the front runner of the entire mess that is our current Democrat primary, Francesca Hong, who is an insanely radical DSA candidate. And she has called for things like the abolition of ICE, for the defunding of police, for the eventual getting rid of prisons. And so what we're seeing is this insane push for Democrat socialism in Wisconsin. And it's not just in Madison, it's not just in Milwaukee, it's all throughout the state. Even the most northern parts of the state have had waves of Hong's literature and yard signs showing up, and it has just been an absolute mess. And I think it's thrown a lot of conservatives in the state, as well as a lot of middle, more purple, moderate Democrats, and people that are
Union on the line factory Democrats, for example.
Yes, exactly. A lot of them are really, I think, intimidated, but she's garnered such a reputation for herself and has made such a name for herself that her popularity has just skyrocketed in ways that I think is unprecedented. I think that she has a lot of national support. She has appeared on podcasts with figures like Hassan Piker and raised over $50,000 on a live stream with him. So she does have a lot of people that are backing her. And while I do believe
but the national can't vote in the Wisconsin primary, right? Like, yes. I mean, LA and New York, they may want to, but they can't cast votes in Wisconsin, thank God.
Thankfully, but what that does give her is a lot of financial leverage. And so
Momentum.
that has allowed her to run an incredible grassroots campaign where you are seeing a lot of people in these smaller towns showing up for her and being willing to donate. She has definitely garnered a huge percentage of the population that is very interested in supporting her just because of the way that she's been promoted online and the social media following that she's kind of attained for herself.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye on this. Again, Brooke Branchen, really appreciate your work. Chesterton Fellow over at the New Guard Press. Stay safe up there in Wisconsin, and hope at least the Republican primary is a little bit easier.
Thankfully, it has been.
All right, let's talk very briefly here about some of the last couple of news updates for the week. The Democrat Party is trying to shiv each other left and right, which may be why the Biden team has just finally dropped the case that they had against the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, and the Oversight Project. So the Oversight Project is an organization that started over at the Heritage Foundation that does a ton of work digging through federal documents, and they pushed for the release of these tapes by Joe Biden, in which he said a lot of stuff totally good to his memoir, boy, and his memoirs. Promise me, America. And remember the whole Robert Hur saying, yeah, Biden likely broke the law, but he's too old and dead to do anything here. And so the court was like, yeah, hey, how come you were too dead and incoherent to stand trial for the crimes you committed, but you're totally not dead enough right now to sue to keep these tapes hidden? That's kind of suspicious. Also, why do you want to hide these tapes? What's going on there, homie, Mr. Rocky Road? The court had originally extended a deadline to August 3rd for Biden to take this before the Supreme Court, before the Department of Justice released the tapes. And so recognizing that Amy Coney Barrett, John Roberts, Justice Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, Brett Kavanaugh, that they were going to look at this and go, hey, and Neil Gorsuch, I think I didn't mention him as well. They're like, you're going to have to release those tapes, boy. The Biden team has now dropped that particular case. Now, Mike Howell over at the Oversight Project did send me a bit of a quick statement on this, because Biden declining to seek further review of the D.C. Circuit's ruling means it's not going before the Supreme Court of the United States. So there's the official statement, and then there's a little something just for me. So the Oversight Project said, today the Oversight Project obtained a complete and total victory over President Joe Biden's auto pen in his sad but predictable efforts to withhold the recordings of his interviews with his ghostwriter. Biden's declination to seek further review of the D.C. Circuit ruling paves the way for the release of the interview tapes. Today's victory is the latest in a string of oversight wins, et cetera, and correct. There are quite a few conservative organizations, too few, but a lot of oversight and let's say constitutional rights organizations and law firms and various other operations that are getting some pretty significant wins over the last 5 years, and this is one of them. Now, Mike actually sent a personal statement to me here. Quote, winner, winner, chicken dinner. Let's find out what kind of shape Auto Pen Joe was in back in 2016. End quote. And that's one fine statement. So that said and aside, I want to move over to the really insane knife in the back stuff that is happening over in the Democrat Party. It's gotten like no coverage today. And I mean, seriously, I watched a little bit of news today because a lot of the shows that I normally listen to are all fighting with each other. And by the way, someone's asked before, and I was going to answer this in the mail time. Hey, Tony, why don't you talk more about like the podcast wars? I've listened to the shows that are like hyper-focused on which influencer or host is fighting with whom. And I don't really get a lot of news from those shows. So I don't really focus on that. So I watched some network TV today, and it hurt me to try to like get a little bit of a bead on what the Democrat Party was doing to change the primary structure. Like, remember what they did to Bernie Sanders with the superdelegates and Hillary Clinton? They've shivved me right in the neck. Well, now they're doing some brand new stuff for Kamala Harris. So before we get to that, I told you that there were several groups that are fighting for constitutional rights and to get things released, to get rights defended and upheld. One of these is, of course, the Alliance Defending Freedom. They're a sponsor of the show, and we love them dearly. And we love them dearly because I've worked with them before. I'm very, very picky about my sponsors. Like, I say no a lot. And why? Because I don't like suggesting things to you guys that you're going to come back later and say, Tony, this pill gave me hives, and this law firm told me to wrap my car around a tree. I don't want that. The Alliance Defending Freedom, though, is someone whom I trust and have worked with before. So again, when Kathy McCord, a school counselor in Eastern Central Indiana, a wonderful lady, released information that the South Madison School Corporation here in Indiana was hiding gender identity and school student transition and transgender transition information from their parents. There's actually a video of some of this case over on our YouTube channel that we just launched for the Tony Kinnett Cast clips itself. You can subscribe to that over at Tony Kinnett Cast. But anywho, back to the Alliance Defending Freedom here. They represented Kathy McCord after she was fired by the Pendleton School Board, the South Madison Community School Board, just for being transparent with parents. And they fought for her tirelessly, even after all of the news moved on, even after everyone else stopped paying attention. And eventually that school would end up settling with her and paying her over $100,000. And I'm getting the exact figure on how much she was paid off. The ADF does that stuff all the time. They're a phenomenal group. Now, currently, they are fighting for a Colorado Christian bookstore and a sports apparel company that are being told that they need to refer to their customers with whatever pronoun the person walks in with, so that you don't get that weird person outside the elevator screaming, she, that kind of a thing. So you should go to joinadf.com/Tony in the Chiron right here, or text Tony, Tony, to 83848. The first gift you give to the ADF will be doubled. And I'm told by some of the comments who have donated that the ADF is such a fine crew. They've called a lot of you after you donate to thank you for the donation. I can't tell you another time that anyone's done that, ever. Like thanking you for being a part of stuff. Normally in Minnesota, they just take your money and send it to Somalia. Wow. So yeah, join adf.com/Tony or text Tony, Tony, to 83848. And I went very off script with this particular ad read. So seriously, tonight, Friday, July 24th, send them a small donation so that they don't call me and you know, say, hey, we're disappointed. Nah, I'm just teasing. They're a fantastic crew. Join adf.com/Tony. Really appreciate their sponsorship and the excellent work they do. Not excellent work goes to the Democratic National Committee. So the DNC, who is $3 million in debt and is going into the easiest midterm in human history that they could win, struggling. All right, you have a couple of outlier polls that are suggesting that the Democrats are getting ahead. A lot of the other polls, according to the Real Clear polling average, shows that Democrats' general congressional ballot lead is shrinking. It's a very mixed bag around the country right now. And it's not getting any better, partly because of the shenanigans in Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota, et cetera, ad nauseum. Well, they're going to get a head start rigging the 2028 primary. Again, I watched network TV today, and although it hurt me, I did notice they weren't covering this like at all. So what's going on here? Well, the Democratic National Committee panel voted that instead of New Hampshire, it's going to be South Carolina who's going to hold the very first 2028 presidential primary. Because, man, all those white people up in New Hampshire, they keep screwing up the vote. And after all, according to Politico and other outlets, a lot of Southern black Democrat voters are saying, you're abandoning us. We're not going to vote Democrat at all. We're going to stay home. As ladies yelled to James Tallarico in Texas, or yelled across congressional districts from Memphis, Tennessee, all the way over to Charleston. Now, that brings us to the committee vote today, where we're going to do a little bit of rigging.
Madam Chair, let me give you the teller's report and for you to announce the outcome. 49 members voted, so 100% of you voted. For Nevada, there were 19 votes. For New Hampshire, there were 4 votes. For South Carolina, there were 26 votes.
Now, what does that mean? It means that South Carolina has now usurped New Hampshire in this particular thing. And by the way, Nevada got 19, New Hampshire got 4. Chris Pappas, Congressman, Chris Pappas from up in New Hampshire. Yeah, he's a representative for New Hampshire's 1st Congressional. He did what all people do when they're really, really angry. He took to social media and he wrote himself a long post. He said, today the DNC gave more power to super PACs and mega donors and took out the power of the hands of the voters. Let me be clear. New Hampshire is the first in the nation state, and we will go first, no matter what party insiders say. Here in the Granite State, candidates are forced to talk with voters face to face. From living rooms to diners, the conversations that happen here make better candidates. This decision is not only wrong for our state and party, but it's wrong for our country. And that's why we won't let this vote stop us. So breaking from the DNC and saying, we're going to elect someone, anybody. Or we're going to elect somebody anyway. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh, he's running for Senate too. Oh boy. Thanks, correspondent Rebecca. Really appreciate that. What a wonderful time. Trying to rig the old primary already, because here's why. If South Carolina votes first, it's going to be Kamala Harris, which is not exactly great. But if South Carolina goes first, Kamala Harris will be, very likely, the DNC's presidential nominee. If New Hampshire goes first, it's going to be somebody else. And yeah, he doesn't really poll very well with black voters. Pete Buttigieg, making his rounds. Again, you know, the gay guy from Indiana who was not liked in Indiana, and so he escaped to Michigan and then chickened out of this Senate race. Well, now he's on TV saying, I'm not going to condemn those young socialists. After all, their energy is necessary. I'm Pete Buttigieg.
Another potential 2028 presidential candidate, Rahm Emanuel, has just written an article in the Wall Street Journal entitled "The Bernie Bros Could Spoil Democrats' Midterms."
That's true, by the way. And Rahm Emanuel, again, Democrat. Oh, what fun, all the infighting, good times. Again, I never would have believed that Republicans standing there and shutting up would be a great policy party platform, but it's working so far.
And I'm quoting him now. The DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, and others are saddling the Democratic Party with nominees whose wildly unpopular positions will protect Republicans from having to pay the price of Donald Trump's corruption and economic incompetence. End quote. Do you agree with Rahm Emanuel?
Yeah, I think those of us who are more moderate in the party should concentrate our efforts on talking about what we're for.
Yes. So nope. Of course not. No, we got to skirt right past it. Now, again, it's not stopping every Democrat. You've still got people like Raphael Warnock who are going to get out there and go, it's white supremacy and they're cleansing us. I mean, of course, in Minnesota, if you say a naughty word, you get fined and community service time. And if you don't pay the fine, you get 90 days in jail. Clearly the most white supremacist country I've ever heard of. Here's Raphael Warnock in Georgia.
There is no question that the Trump-Vance administration is a white supremacist regime that is trying to foist its dark and divisive vision.
Wait a minute. Why would white supremacists be foisting the darkness? Aren't they like, don't they not want the darkness? Don't they want dark colored people? That's kind of weird. Dark and divisive. Ah, yes. Getting on national television or whatever this is. What is this? Roland Martin show. Roland Martin Unfiltered. I've never heard of this. Anyway, you get up on this show and you say, everyone around me is a white supremacist. And they're also very divisive and they're trying to split us up.
Of our country onto the American experiment, just as we observe the 250th anniversary of this grand experiment that has certainly has had and does continue to have its imperfections. Black people have been at the center of the work of trying to transform our country, make a country as good as its promise, one that lives up to the ideals in the charter documents in our nation. And there's no...
Oh, we beat this show on the rankings. All right, good. That's all I really needed to hear. That's very, very exciting from Senator Warnock. Very thrilling stuff. That's getting out the vote. Now, again, I told you, Pete Buttigieg is one option, but New Hampshire's not going to get to go first. No, it's Kamala Harris. She's ready to go, and she's ready to face the real issues. Like, women are getting pregnant.
To put it in law, there may be litigation, but we will be in a much better position than to not do that. And, listen, women are getting pregnant every day in America. And this is a real issue, and we need to act with a sense of haste.
Gosh, stop. The women are getting pregnant. Oh, no. the horror, the scandal that women are getting pregnant. They're having more sex than I am. Kamala Harris. Oh.
About what is at play, what is at stake, and codifying Roe will be an important.
Man, women got to start killing children quickly. We got to codify. We got to make sure that these women are getting they're having babies. We can't have that.
Moment in terms of putting back in place protections.
Now, by the way, I was told, and you were told, that after the whole Roe v. Wade thing, that was the end. Republicans were never going to win again because, oh no, Republicans did what they said they were going to do for years. And then that didn't happen at all. So Kamala Harris running with this one. Oh yeah, we're going to revivify the suburban woman vote. That'll save us. Okay, Sailor. That's real great, real special. Now, there's more to talk about. I guess I could get into, again, the Civil War is getting spicy. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Big Gretch up in Michigan, has now endorsed Haley Stevens, Chris Farley's spiritual successor, for the U.S. Senate race over Abdul El Sayed, which is wonderful.
As governor, I've had one strategy: get things done. And that strategy informs everything that I do. And that's why I'm endorsing Haley Stevens for the U.S. Senate.
Okay, that's great. I don't care. So this has everyone freaking out because now you've got like the socialists and then you've got like the not socialists. And Haley Stevens is literally just running to be Joe Biden, but female and about the same grammatical style. It's very strange. And then you have Abdul El Sayed, Mr. Millionaire, only ever an academic, never actually has done anything useful or actually worked any real jobs. But hey, he's socialist Islamic boy. That's exciting. Okay, thrilling. Now, according to a Vote Hub Ellis Bates kind of analysis on a Glenn Gariff poll, a Whitmer endorsement could really help sway undecideds. Bates called this a nightmare scenario for El Sayed. There's just a lot of knife stabbing. And by the way, it is July 24th. You shouldn't be having this right here. And again, nothing is decided yet. None of this is saying that Republicans are like knocking it out of the park anywhere at all. But what I am telling you is that you really, really don't want this as the opposition party. People only come out to do the voting if you give them something that is an alternative. Very rarely do Americans go, oh, I'm so mad at everything. I'm just going to go vote for anyone who's the opposite in the midterms. That's how like Hollywood thinks people vote in the midterms. That's not voting is too annoying for people to like. When have you ever gone to the DMV like out of spite? Like, I'm going to go renew my license. Like, no. Best of luck to him. All right. We're going to do just a smidgen before the end of the show this evening of some of the good old-fashioned mail time. So the best way to get something in for mail time, you head down to the Discord link in the description, and you head down to the mail time channel in that Discord chat, and then you can throw a question my way. It's great. It's not anything special because, they're just a viewer engagement kind of a segment. Before we get to those, though, consider heading over to @Tony Kinnett Cast here on YouTube, our new second YouTube channel. It also gives you a couple more details on that Kathy McCord case. That's where some of those old videos and things were stored, as well as some of the other interviews and content we're bringing out. Head there and help us get a thing rolling. We've got a little something special planned. But alas, it's time for everyone's most tolerated segment. Just a little of the old mail time. Mail time. Mail time.
On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
All right. This is from EDW. Can I share some insight on China rearming Iran and then China's BDS-3 technology? So China's always struggled with GPS navigation. The interlinking, China likes to interlink a lot of its services, so it's easy for the government to keep an eye on things for like regime tracking. They link a lot of their parts of the Chinese linked a lot of their internet together before the West ever did because it was a means of surveillance. It is a lot more fragile than they give it credit for. And I'm not really necessarily super worried about that. It can't support Iran itself. Is China resupplying Iran? Not as well as they were. The MOU and the ceasefire made it really easy for Iran to do a lot of resupplying. This is why some people called it kind of a really dumb idea. But anywho. That brings to kind of the next question here from Holstein Heifer, good friend of the show here, says, Tony, wouldn't eliminating Muqtada Khomeini be the most efficient way to return the regular folks in Iran to a point where a new thinking leader backed by common people could be elected? No, because Muqtaba's not running the country. The parliament of Iran and then the IRGC are currently wrestling over control of the country. So you have the IRGC, essentially, like, for your historical folks, it's their, technically not their military, but it's their military. It's like the SS, which wasn't technically part of the German Reich's army and air force, but also like they had like parallel ranks that kind of meant the same thing. Anywho, the same thing for the IRGC. It's like separate but the same. So the IRGC and the parliament, who are often unified, are also not. So really the answer should be a bomb through the parliament of the Iranians. That's the answer. As soon as the parliament meets and they're doing their little chants of death to America, you give them death from America. You know, a little of the old, that's the answer. Also, destabilizing the IRGC and hitting all of the IRGC police stations at once, that's really good. That's the answer. Seriously, that's the answer to that question. Now, do I think that Muqtaba is alive based on all these intelligence reports? No. I haven't actually seen anything that suggests Muqtaba is alive. There was someone speaking for him that's saying, oh, maybe I'm going to choose nukes all of a sudden. No. Media loves running with that, and I'm sure that other clickbait YouTube people are also saying, oh, Iran suddenly oh man, they're going to pursue a nuke all of a sudden. And what were they doing before? If nuclear power enrichment required a lot lower than what they ended up with, what were they trying to enrich it to? Oh, the Guinness Book of World Records? Most uranium enriched beyond 15% in a mountain? No. Also, I think the Soviets in the Urals are forever going to hold that record. So, no. Good question, though. And, you know, I think that answers a couple of questions from quite a few people here. Do I have a comment on the International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan's removal? Yes, I do. So as you may recall, we played this breaking clip from Zoran Mamdani, the mayor of New York City, a couple of days ago, where he said, Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal, and I can't arrest him, but I want to, because the ICC said he's a criminal. He's been charged. And this Karim Khan guy, who, you know, was the one who charged Netanyahu with being super war criminal guy, was suspected of being super sexual assault man. Like Eric Swalwell, but more Arabic. And, well, then they came forward and said, we've cleared him of all wrongs. And a bunch of people on one certain website went, yay! And then 2 days later, it's like, he's resigning, and we're getting him to step down because of sexual assault and other human trafficking concerns. You know, I very much do love, for example, when certain individuals going after a person of prominence get caught, like, let's say Fannie Willis, dating someone that she shouldn't be involved in the case regarding President Trump. Always love that. That's always a good hoot. So same kind of a thing. That's kind of my statement on the matter. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it because I don't care what the ICC or the UN say ever. I hate the UN. I despise the UN. I despise the ICC. I think that European countries who can't hold standards ever for any reason at all don't get to have international organizations that they're just going to hand over to more forceful entities anyway. Like, oh no, the Belgians think. I don't care what the Belgians think. So from Howard's Gardens, when is the Republican convention? I guess the RNC's having like their middle of the year shindig. I'm not quite sure on the exact dates. I think I may have said this before here on the show. I think August, maybe September. And it's in Texas, I think. What do I think about that right now? I don't know how good of an idea it is. I was very, very for it until the Republican Congress, especially the Senate, decided to do nothing. Now, I know that President Trump is really, really mad at John Thune. I will remind you all yet again, Mitch McConnell, who may or may not be alive at this point. Again, we don't know. We were told he's recovering. We're not sure. And then Tom Tillis of North Carolina, Susan Collins in Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and then, depending on the day, Bill Cassidy, John Cornyn, and the occasional sometimes Rand Paul have decided they're not nuking the filibuster and they're not going to get the Save America Act and voter ID law passed. They're like, no. And so it's not passing. It's not happening. Doesn't matter what Thune does. Well, Thune can remove committee assignment. That's not going to change Tom Tillis' vote. It's not going to change McConnell's vote. It's not going to change Lisa Murkowski or Susan Collins at this point. That's enough, and it's done. Now, what should Thune be doing? Thune should be pointing it out every day. That would be good. But he's not. I mean, again, I'm just saying, I don't have anything for you here. But I agree with the president, the Save America Act should be passed. What I really don't like is people pretending to you guys that, oh, the Save America Act, if only Thune would mention it on the floor, that would change that. You really think that Tom Tillis of North Carolina, the most grumpy and obstinate person on the Republican side of the aisle, is going to change his vote to something Donald Trump wants? You think Mitch McConnell is going to change his vote? Lisa and Susan are suddenly going to be like, oh, I never thought about it till Thune was the... Maybe Susan Collins, maybe that's not enough. Bill Cassidy, who's still throwing a temper tantrum after losing his primary. John Cornyn, who's throwing even more of a temper tantrum. Really? Like, really? I'm just saying, I know there's a lot of people, like, he's like, Thune's career is over. Okay, sure. Great, but that doesn't mean that that's going to suddenly pass the Save America Act. If Trump comes out tomorrow and is like, I really don't like Thune, I think he should step down from the Senate leadership position. And? Great. It's not going to do anything. So, like, for the convention, Republicans' best hope right now is for all of Trump's plans to work. Trump throwing tariffs on everything at this point is wildly unpopular, and it absolutely will not make the economy thrilled right before the election. Sorry, that's just the way it is. Not going to work. Now, did tariffs destroy the economy? No. Did they make the economy great and wonderful?
Nope.
So, like, I mean, look, guys, there were a lot of gambles that were made. And if Iran is finished off and we didn't do a big MOU ceasefire or whatever kind of a thing, we'd probably be in a better place. But we don't know because we did some middle of the road fence writing and Congress did nothing. And so Republicans' best bet right now, seriously, the best bet for Republicans right now is for Democrats to screw up so badly that people just don't show up to the election. That's the truth. And if you don't agree with me there, that's the objective analysis on that particular point. So that's just my take on it. And there's an irony here because the Republican Senate is in a lot safer position than the House is, which is sad because Mike Johnson has done a way better job. All the people who are like really mean about Mike Johnson were dead wrong and then some. Dead wrong. So anyway, those things aside, I'll take two quick questions here. Dorian Billings says, hey, is Ashley still running up in Maine? Slagathor is not winning. Troy Jackson is going to be the pick, and there's a scandal about to break about that side. So there you go. That's that side of things. Did Tony cover the Hunter Biden and the Nick Fuentes interview? If I just wanted to listen to severe indigestion, there are so many other options and things that I'm forced to listen to daily. I have no interest in like all of these people who really want to be influential, pretending to be influential in front of each other. I despise influencers, but more so than just influencers in general. I just don't. I don't care. Hunter Biden, I don't, just other little interviews that people are doing, no matter who they are. I don't. Okay, they're not really doing a whole lot. I mean, so those things and said and aside, I think. From Miss Mong, and this was actually a really good question. This is on earlier reporting. That's why I'm taking just an extra second here. What's your issue with people using their home address for a business? Isn't that what lots of people use? I mean, I don't have any issue with people using their home address at all. Like I just said, I had previously used residential addresses for businesses. What I then said was Delaware and Indiana both called me and said, hey, you have multiple businesses at this home address. That's fishy. Tell us what's going on. And then I told them. And in the same way, like if you have 65 businesses at one address, guess what? That's really bleeping fishy. That's different than you just hosting, Jill's Bakery and fun and shenanigans. So anyway, that's my particular take on things. A lot of people are really, really retarded. And that's why we try to actually cover the news here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. So we'll see you guys on Tuesday. So subscribe to @TonyKinnettCast over on YouTube so you can catch a little bit, if you so prefer, of, for example, a lot of our New York trip on Monday stuff. We'll be back Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all have a great weekend.